Hi, third grade. Detectives in togas. We're in chapter 14 now. Getting there. A letter to the emperor. When Mucius had finished his story, his friends gazed at him in silence. They did not know whether to be awed or to burst out laughing. What a wild tale. How were they to believe it? On the other hand, there were things he had brought back with him. Rufus's cloak, which was still wet, and his own lantern. Apparently, he was not telling tales, in which case he was a hero and deserving of great respect. They were in their secret cave, sitting on rickety boxes around a table on whose cracked marble top a candle was burning. Playing one day on the Esquiline Hill, they had come across this roomy cave in the rock and had promptly appropriated it for their own use. It was their official headquarters. Here they met whenever they had anything important to discuss, and here they hid when it seemed wise to keep out of sight for a short while. One dark corner was piled with old junk which they had collected around town, and which they intended to use some day to furnish their cave. Over the entrance they had hung a tattered old rug to serve as a curtain. Publius was the first to express his doubts of Mucius's tale. "You mean to tell us you spent the entire night locked up in the baths of Diana?" he asked slowly. "You can ask the superintendent if you don't believe me," Mucius replied, affronted. "What did your folks say about your being out all night?" Flavius asked timidly. "I was lucky," Mucius said. "They were at the theater yesterday afternoon, and afterwards they went to a party. So they came home late and slept late in the morning. Only our doorkeeper saw me this morning, and he won't tell on me." "If I had known you were going to stay at Lucas's, I would have stayed too," Antonius said. "I didn't stay by choice," Mucius said. "I was trapped there when you idiots slammed the door behind you." "Would Lucas have done anything bad to you?" Flavius asked. "That I can't say," Mucius replied, "but snakes were crawling all over the place, and I didn't like that." "I would have stabbed Lucas with my dagger," Antonius boasted. "If you had fallen down dead from fright first," Publius said. "If you hadn't fallen down dead from fright first," Publius mocked him. "Quiet! All this is besides the point," Julius interrupted them. He pushed the candle aside, leaned across the table, and looked searchingly into Mucius's face. "So your idea is that Rufus spent the fatal night locked up in the baths of Diana too?" he asked. "I've explained the whole thing to you," Mucius said impatiently. "Rufus must have gone to see Lucas. Then he must have jumped into the baths of Diana. In the morning, when the superintendent opened the door, he scooted out and ran away. And the only way he could have gotten in was the way I did, through the skylight in the ceiling. That must have been between the first and second hours of the night, when there was still enough water in the pool. If he jumped half an hour later, he would have broken his neck," Rufus said. "So Rufus is innocent. He could not have written on the temple wall." "But what made him visit Lucas?" Flavius asked. "The gods alone know that," Mucius said. "All I know is that if he was inside the baths of Diana, he could only have got there by crossing roofs from Lucas's house. Lucas's house is the only one around that is high enough as the baths. "What Mucius says makes sense," Julius said excitedly. "Remember Rufus's clothes that we found under his bed? They were soaking wet." "So there," Mucius burst out, pleased by his support. "They were wet because he jumped into the pool at the baths of Diana." "We must do something at once," Julius said. "But what?" Flavius asked. "We'll go to see Livia and tell her all about it." "What can Livia do?" Publius asked. "She herself said that she is powerless. The prefect of the city won't receive her because he knows that the emperor is down on Praetonius." "Then we have to go to the emperor himself," Flavius reasoned. "If the emperor orders Rufus's release, that's all there is to it." That was a bold idea. "What do you know?" Publius jeered. "Flavius is turning into a hero in his old age." "That isn't a bad idea," Mucius said. "We can prove to the emperor that Rufus is innocent." "It's not as easy as all that," Julius said. He dropped his voice and went into a whisper. "The emperor is heavily guarded. He lives in fear that someone will try to kill him. You don't get admitted just like that. You have to ask for an audience, and that can take days. I know what we can do, Antonius said with a wild conspiratorial expression. What? The others asked sulkily. Antonius's suggestions were apt to be pretty crazy. We'll write him a letter, Antonius rapped out. He can't be scared of a letter. The others were stunned. For once, Antonius's proposal was sensible. They could leave the letter at the palace, and it would surely be delivered to the emperor at once. But who's going to write it? Flavius asked. You, of course, Publius said. You have the best handwriting in the class. For once, it will come in handy. Flavius protested, but he was voted down. What shall I write on? He complained. That's easy, Julius said, taking a parchment roll out from under his toga. Here is a book of Cicero's orations. I don't like to part with it, but we'll use the back for the letter. It's fairly clean. Flavius had objections. A letter on the back of a book? What will the emperor think? He's likely to read the book and not the letter. The emperor is smarter than you are, Mucius said firmly. We can't take the time now to go looking for paper or wax tablets. This is an emergency. The emperor will understand. Just cross out the writing of the book. But Julius would not hear of that. Do not cross it out, he pleaded. That would be a pity, and besides, the emperor might be annoyed. He thinks the world of Cicero, and so he'll be pleased to get the book. Go ahead, write on the back. There's no harm in it. Come on. But I still don't know what to write, Flavius said miserably. I'll dictate to you, Julius offered. Flavius sat down at the table, unrolled the parchment, smoothed it out, placed the candle beside it, and picked up a charcoal pencil. Then he waited for Julius's dictation. Julius paced up and down, pondering. Finally, he stopped behind Flavius and began, Dear Emperor. But that was as far as he got. Mucius and Publius instantly pounced on him. That's not the proper salutation for the emperor, Mucius said. Then what is? Julius asked, offended. I know, Antonius burst out. Divine, merciful, glorious, revered, all-knowing emperor. That's too much, Mucius said. They quarreled about how the emperor ought to be addressed. Then they debated about every sentence as it was dictated to Flavius. And finally, they argued about the signature. It took almost an hour before the letter was completed. But at last they were satisfied with it, and Flavius had to read it aloud several times. Most revered divine emperor, Flavius read, we are petitioning you for mercy for Rufus, son of Pretonius. He is in prison, accused of having written Caius is a dumbbell on the wall of the temple of Minerva, which is dedicated to you. Rufus is innocent, for he was locked up in the baths of Diana all night. He jumped into the pool through an opening in the roof. That must have been between the first and second hours of the night. If he had jumped in when there was no water there, he would have been dead in the morning and could not have run away. The superintendent leaves at night and comes back in the morning. Meanwhile, he drains the water and locks the door. Rufus was in there and could not get out. He ran past the superintendent in the morning, and the superintendent thinks it was Mucius, but Mucius knows it was Rufus, for the superintendent found Mucius' lantern in the pool, but Rufus had the lantern with him, not Mucius. The two policemen said that Caius is a dumbbell was not on the temple wall before the 5th hour of the night. They know that for certain because that's the hour when they always get hungry and eat bread and figs and drink wine. The police always tell the truth, but Caius is a dumbbell was on the temple wall before dawn. At that time, Rufus was still locked in the baths of Diana. That should prove that Rufus doesn't go around desecrating temples. Therefore, we throw ourselves at your feet and ask for mercy for our friend Rufus, the pupils of the Xanthos school. Flavius stopped, out of breath. Couldn't be clearer, Mucius said, rubbing his hands with delight. Now we must hurry and deliver the letter to the palace, Julius said. Hold on. Haste makes waste, Publius warned. Something else occurs to me. What about Scribonus? What do you mean? Mucius asked uneasily. Scribonus is the famous handwriting expert in Rome, Publius said. If Scribonus maintains that the writing is genuine, it is genuine. Julius murmured. and he began squinting at Mucius out of the corners of his eyes. Antonius and Flavius were also assailed by doubts once more. One or the other was telling the truth, Scribonus or Mucius, but Scribonus was a famous scholar and Mucius was just a classmate. Mucius sat down on a box again, propped his head on his clenched fists, and stared into space. Maybe you only dreamt it all, Antonius said. I have funny dreams sometimes, too. Last night I dreamt I was a pirate and fell into water, and I would have drowned if a dolphin hadn't. Furious, Mucius leaped to his feet and struck Rufus' wet cloak under Antonius's nose. There! Did I dream that? He shouted. And what about the lantern I found in the baths of Diana? The cloak smells bad, Antonius gasped, half smothered. Then don't talk such nonsense, Mucius said. Rufus is innocent. It isn't a dream. That is the truth. But then who did the writing on the temple? Julius asked. The emperor will want to know that, too. I can't know who wrote on the temple, Mucius cried, besides himself. But somebody must have copied Rufus's handwriting. But who? Julius repeated stubbornly. Maybe it was a ghost, Antonius said. At that moment there was a crashing noise in the dark corner of the cave, and a sullen voice said, It was me. The boys whirled around in fright. From back of the piles of junk, Caius emerged. He clambered over an upturned barrel. I was the one who wrote Caius is a dumbbell on the temple wall, he said, scowling at the boys. Ha! So remember, write 3 good sentences about what just happened, okay? Keep up with your book because I have a way I'm going to be reading your journal entries. Don't lose them. Don't shuffle them around. Keep them nice in your vocabulary notebook, okay? The back of the notebook, 25 pages in, you're going to write, okay? So please don't get behind on this. I really, this is your writing for this project. And it does count towards your writing grade and your reading grade. Okay? I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.